Back here, live pictures from Melbourne at Albert Park. We've seen practice session 1 of the Formula Ones, but it's not all just about that. The V8 Supercars are here this weekend. There's no competition points up for grabs, but plenty to drive for. The drivers will want to be there. Jack Perkins and Richard Crowder take us to it.
Thanks very much, Gilly. Looking forward to it. The Coates Hire V8 Supercar Challenge here at the Formula One Rolex Australian Grand Prix. It's an annual event. This is the 20th time the V8 Supercars have visited Albert Park. They've only missed one of the Australian Grand Prix since it's been here in 1996. Jack Perkins alongside me now, a V8 Supercar race winner. And for the first time at Albert Park, Jamie Whincup has a pole position to his credit.
Yeah, he does, but how good was that Gilly throwing to us? I thought that would happen in the nets, wouldn't it? But yeah, Jamie Whincup took pole position, and that team were absolutely pumped up about that yesterday. They managed to get ahead of Mark Winterbottom, our new champion, and like I said, really pumped up and happy to beat the Fords. Fabian Coulthard, who's won here before for Brad Jones Racing, this year third on the grid for DJR Team Penske, and Chaz Mostert, second race back now since his injuries at Bathurst. Good to see him in the top 4.
And those top 4 cars covered by less than 1/10 of a second over a 5.3k, almost 2-minute lap. Remarkable stuff. Some drivers to watch a little bit further down the field. Scott McLaughlin, a winner here 2 years ago, will be one to watch in the Wilson Security Volvo. Garth Panda and Mark Winterbottom are tied on 7 race wins apiece here at Albert Park. The outright leader in wins here is an old mate of yours, Russell Ingall. He's got 8, so they're very, very close to tying that record, but Mark Winterbottom's a lot further up the grid and has a better chance of doing it. The other topic we need to talk about, Jack, for this one is the rolling start. We'll touch on that when we get to it. In the meantime, it's a very good afternoon to our man in pit lane, Mark Larkham.
G'day, boys. How are you up there? Blowing a gale down here. It was interesting because there was a bit of panic here just now because we copped a shower before the start of the race, and if you just rewind a few weeks, deja vu Clipsal, nothing as wet, obviously, but there was a bit of panic because it was not really enough time if those guys had to put their wets on. So it was a bit of a scurry, but everyone's on slick tyres and looking forward to this rolling start.
Tricky conditions. I mean, the drivers either want it to be dry or wet, as silly as it sounds. This sort of halfway point makes it very difficult, not only for the drivers, but like Larko said, for the teams to get tyres on in time makes it difficult. But I've got the radar here in the comm box. Rain's coming, but they might sneak in, and it's definitely dry out there now. And like you said, this is a unique situation. Safety car peels off the road now, and we get set for a rolling start. So 2 by 2, Jamie Whincup will set the pace, and Mark Winterbottom is outside now. They're not allowed to cross across the centre of the track until the red light goes out. And last year, there was no red light, and we saw chaos at the start line. So now they're dictating the speed, and once the red light goes out, we are racing.
Winterbottom and Whincup on the front row, Holden and Ford, 2 of the most successful V8 Supercar teams of the last decade, and they're racing at Albert Park. And the famous spread behind as the field sorts themselves out. Watch Fabian Coulthard, he was 3rd. The DJR Team Penske Ford, but it's Whincup into turn 1. Muscle behind, and Jason Bright turned around, straights the car up, but he's got damage. Nick Percat, the Clipsal winner, off the road on the exit of turn 1.
Looked like Scott Pye involved there with Bridie as well as we get down into turn 3. Normally this is where there's a bit more chaos. We've seen Bridie already in trouble. The rest of the field look like they're getting through pretty well. Pye with a little bit of damage on the front of that car.
3 wide into turn 4. Shane Van Gisbergen, the big mover. He loves the dicey conditions, and he goes to P2 from 5th on the grid. Remarkable start from the second of the 2 Red Bull races. Winterbottom back to 3rd. Feeling the heat from Fabian Coulthard, and Mostert in behind.
A little bit of water down here under the shade of the trees down in there in turn 6 and 7. We saw Winterbottom and Fabian Coulthard run wide onto the AstroTurf. That is full of water because it's been raining all morning, so that will not be any grip whatsoever on slick tyres.
Really difficult opening half a lap for Mark Winterbottom. All that momentum on that run into turn 1, he lost, and it's hurt him for the rest of the lap so far. Needs to settle down and gather it up for the second half of the first of 12 laps. Oh, it's busy behind. There are a couple of blokes 2 by 2 there. Here goes Coulthard down the inside at 11.
He's got him.
Gets into the Bottle O Ford and turns him round.
It was interesting. It looked like Mark already had damage on the right rear. There was smoke coming off the guard, and then Fabian Coulthard had a bit of momentum up the inside, and they've touched. And let me tell you, if that was a championship race, there'd be a few unhappy players, but I still reckon Mark wouldn't be very pleased there.
Well, we all go, it's a non-points round, but the drivers, to their credit, consistently say when the helmet goes on, it doesn't matter, and we race as hard as we can. There's proof. Opening lap drama at Albert Park in the V8 Supercars, and Fabian Coulthard Gets into Mark Winterbottom through the fastest chicane on the circuit. Great complex of corners.
This will be interesting because we sat in the drivers' meeting earlier on yesterday with all the drivers present, and there was discussion about racing room, whether you need to give the car on the outside room or not, and this will come under fire. This will set the standard now for the rest of the year as we see smoke pouring off one of the cars at the back. It looks like Todd Kelly's Nissan.
Well, that's the second time this weekend he's had dramas. Had an oil line come off that car in practice one and a big fire at the back. The damage wasn't actually that significant, but it lost him track time, and he thought that had set this program back all weekend. You lose a full session and all that experience and knowledge. Here's Mostert and Fabian Coulthard dicing it up. Jamie Whincup at the end of lap 1, 2.7 seconds up the road from his teammate Shane van Gisbergen, who went from 5th to 2nd in the first half a dozen corners. Feisty stuff, and this fight for third continues.
So we've got a safety car now, yellow flags by the look of it, and the big winner, like you said, was Shane van Gisbergen jumping up to 2nd. Fabian Coulthard, a lot of debris in the front of the radiator intake on that Falcon. You know, if he doesn't clear that debris, then the engine could potentially run warm.
Mark Winterbottom 24th, thanks to that spin at turn 11. Mercedes-Benz safety car is out for Todd Kelly's car, pulled off just to the side of the Formula One pit exit. Here's a look at the start. So lights went out and they went.
And this is not as easy as it looks. As soon as you go wide open on the throttle, it spins the wheels. You've got 650 horsepower, and it's not as easy as it looks, but they were pretty tame in the front half, and we see Bridie there, definitely got tagged by Scott Pye in the Western Star Penske Mobile.
So Pye started 10th, he's 8th now, Bright with damage, and that was at turn 3, so that damage carted him off the road at turn 3 a little bit later on in the lap, because he actually rebounded quite well. So this was the move with Mark Winterbottom and Fabian Coulthard side by side. They talked about racing room in the driver's briefing. Jack, what's your thoughts?
It's a tough one. It's not a common corner. We see another angle. And look, Fabian was definitely there. Mark's going to argue he wasn't far enough, and Fabian's going to argue that Mark shut the door. But let me tell you, sitting there on the fastest corner on the racetrack, very lucky to not get any more damage on that Bottle Falcon.
And Jacko, just to put that in perspective, that's a 244 km/h entry to that corner. So it's an unusual one to stick your nose up the inside, and if someone does, probably need to give them a little bit of respect.
Yeah, exactly right, Larko. And it's one of those things where it's not the biggest passing spot on the racetrack, but Fabian, like I said, will argue he was up the inside, and the end result is it's taken our new champion out of the lead of the race, and he'll be interesting to watch now coming from the rear in this restart.
Red Bull Racing 888 haven't won here since 2011, nor to that point has the most successful ever team at Albert Park. The Holden Racing team haven't won since 2011 either. They're in a little bit more strife for James Courtney in P6. Red Bulls 1 and 2 at the moment. Haven't tasted victory here since 2011, so they'll be very keen to break that curse. And you know Roland Dane as well as anybody, Jack. Championship points round or not, he loves to win races, so he'll be very keen to get back to the top here.
Yeah, no one comes to a race to lose, trust me, and especially Roland Dane. They're here to win and really showcase the car speed they've got. A little bit of a replay here. This, I think, is Todd Kelly. It looks like it's had a big mechanical failure in front of Lee Holdsworth, and I'd suggest that's potentially the same problem they had yesterday with an oil line. Lots of smoke. That's just hot oil hitting the exhaust pipe, and potentially a little bit on the road. And Todd, being the owner of the equipment, he knew to pull that over. A lot of other drivers would have tried to drive that back with maybe no oil in it, which wouldn't have gone down that well.
He's got plenty of mechanical sympathy because he helps build the engines for this program. So
and a bit of... Sorry, boys, I was going to say, a bit of a shame to see this because Nissan got 3 cars in the top 10 now in the championship. They've been working very, very hard on their engine program for a couple of years now, and fair to say they're probably where they need to be. So encouraging signs for those people that are Nissan fans. I'm one of them, got a Navara Ute, love it. So disappointing to see that. Maybe a bit of finger problem.
Team BOC, Commodore just off the road. Qualified really well. Jason Bright, and they were very, very strong all throughout 2 practice sessions and the race yesterday. Well, while we're under safety car, we'll take this opportunity to jump away and get a commercial break out of the way. Our coverage, the Formula One Rolex Australian Grand Prix, continues here on One. Crazy old day at Albert Park. The sun shining now, little more than an hour ago during that Formula One practice session. The rain was coming down, the wind's still blowing very, very hard. It's just a typical day in Melbourne town. Richard Craill, Jack Perkins and Mark Larkham in pit lane bringing you the action for race 1 of the Coates Hire V8 Supercar Challenge. Jamie Whincup leads the way. His teammate, new teammate for this year, Shane van Gisbergen, is second, having started this race fifth. We are under safety car for Todd Kelly's car sales Nissan that was pulled to the side of the road at pit exit. And also Jason Bright's Team BOC Commodore parked up at turn 3 with front damage after that contact at turn 1. Shame for Brighty. Brad Jones Racing really struggled at the Clipsal 500 2 weeks ago, but they tuned that car up well in between and qualified 6th. It looked like a really promising start for now the most experienced driver in the field. Unfortunately, outside of Craig Lowndes, I should say. Unfortunately, it's ended poorly for Brighty, who have to do it from the back of the field in race 2 later on today.
Yeah, BJR certainly haven't kicked off the year they would have liked. We see Brighty's car there. The damage he had into turn 1 has actually removed the front spoiler and it got stuck under the left front tyre. And then he just had no turn when he got to turn 3 and it wasn't even worth trying to drive it back because it just does more damage. And once you're out of this race now, you're done. So he's parked it up and I'm sure they'll be back tomorrow and they'll be trying to work back through the field and show the speed that they generated yesterday.
The other thing to touch on that Larko talked about briefly before the start of the race is that compared to last year, we're running the Dunlop soft tyre here at Albert Park. So much like Formula 1, 2 compounds of tyres in V8 supercar racing, a hard and a soft. Where on the hard last year, the softer tyre, it's a faster tyre, but wears quicker. So probably won't play quite so much a role in this race with these laps under safety car, but they get 4 sets to use, basically 1 a race, Jack. So by race 4, it'll be interesting to see how these cars are looking after their Dunlops.
Yeah, I reckon the really interesting thing to be watching here was already playing out. I mean, this race today is now going to be a competition between Shane van Gisbergen and Jamie Whincup. Now, whilst we're not talking about a championship here, it's really important. Both these guys want to telegraph a message to each other about who's going to be king of the kids in that garage. This is a sight you're going to be seeing, I guarantee you, for the rest of the year. I think it's going to be a focus for the rest of this race. Remembering that these restarts are going to be the best opportunity to have a crack.
Larko's exactly right. We saw this last year with Mark Winterbottom and Chaz Mostert. Chaz was running second, potentially a little bit faster than Mark, and you've got to stamp your authority early with your teammate. You've got to let him know if you're faster and you're going to beat him, you've got to pass him cleanly on track. And it's the first time this year we're going to see these two run neck and neck, and they're going to have similar car speed, as is Chaz there in third. So this restart will be very crucial. And look at Shane already playing a bit of a game, just sneaking up on the high side. They get ready to have a 2x2 restart.
Field sorts themselves out. They need to get themselves lined up before they get the green flag and go back to racing. Double file restarts, V8 supercar style, and the Red Bull teammates will lead them back down to turn 1. So it's basically a complete reboot of the motor race. There's the flag, there's the spread, and there's Whincup in front, but he's got his teammate right alongside. And how brave will the Kiwi be around the outside? The answer is Whincup gets through.
As did Fabian Coulthard. Now, he got past Chaz there from the outside, got the inside into turn 2. James Courtney also looks like he snuck up a position there into 5th.
And Garth Tander, 15th he started, currently scored 7th in car number 2. Few better racers in this field than GT. There's Scott Pye, the young South Australian, works the DJR Team Penske Ford up the inside of Courtney, retakes the position, and Tander now looking to put one on his teammate. McLaughlin's in the mix, so the Volvo's got some net gain as well. And there's Frosty from a long way back in the field. We saw the dramas down at turn 12 in the opening lap.
There is no better guy in this field than Garth Tander in terms of car placement and getting the positions done. His restarts and race starts are phenomenal, and he's moved a hell of a lot from where he qualified yesterday. Chaz Mostert in third's got a lot of smoke coming out the back. Whether that's terminal or a bit of tyre damage, I'd suggest that left rear guard maybe touching the tyre. But Fabian Coulthard has ranged right up on the back of these three, and it's going to be a close race here. Shane van Gisbergen there in second in the new Red Bull colours, chasing down his teammate Jamie Whincup.
How promising is this for DJR Team Penske? They unloaded as a 2-car team on the streets of Adelaide 2 weeks ago on the fast. They unloaded here on a completely different style of circuit, smooth, fast and flowing, and they're fast. They look really strong. And Fabian Coulthard looking to put a move on his fellow Kiwi. Whincup goes defensive and grabs a left front. And Van Gisbergen's in the game here. Great battle between the teammates. This is what Larko was talking about, and Van Gisbergen down the inside will wrestle the race lead away from his teammate.
And the pressure from Shane van Gisbergen made Jamie Whincup make a mistake. Locked the left front tyre, and now Fabian Coulthard out on the wet grass trying to get past Whincup, who's lost a lot of momentum, and Chaz is buying into this argument as well. Great race.
This is super racing, and Chaz Mostert in the game, second here last year. Any lingering questions over that Bathurst accident answered by the young man at the Clipsal 500. He continued his great form here at Albert Park in qualifying. Just behind them is Scott Pye. So those two Team Penske cars working their way forward. Then the Holden Racing Team duo of Courtney leading Tander. McLaughlin up to 8th, started this one in 12th place. Craig Lowndes on the restart shuffled back to 9th, and Cam Waters, the third PRA car, is currently rounding out the top 10. First to the Nissan is the championship leader, Michael Caruso. He's 11th in car 23.
Fabian Coulthard in 3rd. If you can see closely, he's got a lot of debris in the front of that radiator. He's very lucky this is not an endurance race, because that will overheat. Look at the debris in the front section. Compared to the Triple Eight cars, they've pulled all the blanking out and nothing's catching those leaves, whereas the DJR Team Penske car has all the front blanking in, and that will overheat very quickly. 0.4
the margin, Van Gisbergen to win Cup. What did you think of the Shane Van Gisbergen we saw at the Clipsal 500? I think there was a lot of chatter that he was going to get himself in a Triple Eight car and destroy the field because of his raw speed and unbelievable racecraft we've seen before. It wasn't the case, and it was Jamie Whincup leading the way, as a lot of people expected. What did you read on SVG there, and what does this say now, 2 rounds in?
I think the reality is Shane Van Gisbergen was already in a Triple Eight car. It was a customer car ran by Techno, and he was winning races.
Yep.
So to jump in another car and another team straight away and expect to win straight away is going to be difficult, and it really highlights how competitive this championship is. A lot of the drivers and teams that have changed didn't come out firing at Clipsal 500 whatsoever. You know, Timmy Slade here on screen in the BJR car, he's taking a bit of time to adjust. James Moffat in the Volvo. You know, it's so hard to just jump in someone else's car and win the first race. But we see Shane, you know, he's probably the one that's jumped teams but stayed in similar equipment, similar driving style, similar car setup. And we see here now leading his experienced teammate in Jamie Whincup. His runs are on the board, as are Shane's, and it's going to be a great battle for teammates this year.
Yeah, it's a good point, Jack. When you look at Triple Eight, Red Bull Racing, they are, for me, by far and away the most disciplined team in the pit lane, and I wouldn't suggest that Shane's not disciplined, but he's a pretty happy-go-lucky type of guy, so there'll be a transition time where he's going to have to fit into the way they go about their business, which is just not your attitude, it's also your contribution to the debriefs and the way the car is set up. But what I'm hearing, his contribution already, particularly around the data, is absolutely first class. Hey, quickly, I'm not surprised these FG Falcons are doing quite well around here. Let's not forget it was only 12 months ago that they gave these things some aerodynamic tweaking, and they were rockets. As our tyres go away, I think we're going to see a little bit of form here. And amongst this wind that you're seeing, now remember, a Formula One car around here will make nearly 2.5 tonnes of downforce. Our V8 supercars, smaller wings, they'll make a couple of 100 kilos as they go through some of these faster corners. But that is really affected by this wind blowing across the circuit, making it really hard in the fast stuff.
Hey, Larko, while we've got you, I'm keen for your thoughts on DJR Team Penske. I said to Jack before, fast at Clipsal on a bumpy street circuit, fast here as well. Promising signs for them.
It is, because if you could say the same thing about HRT, they'd be happy. I mean, it's about the two distinctly different circuits, Richard. It's a good pickup. You know, we've got our street circuits, and people love coming here, well, the teams do, for the opportunity to sort that out. Team Penske, interesting one, isn't it? I think they're just going to bide their time. They're probably doing a little bit better than we thought at this stage, but that team will be a monster in coming years. I think they're going to show a lot of teams in the pit lane how to do it a little bit differently by using multiple cars in the championship. A bit of an American thing, which we haven't seen there. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Undoubtedly one of the best teams in world motorsport, so it's really cool to have Penske on the grid. Shane's just edged away from Jamie. We saw him have that big lock-up with the left front tyre when Shane was able to get past him, and he may just be nursing a flat-spotted left front tyre. So when you lock the tyre, it's like a 50-cent piece. You ground out a flat section in the road, and then every time you jump on the brake pedal after that, it wants to connect that flat spot. So he may be just nursing, as we see Shane with about 3 car lengths now over Jamie. Fabian's getting quite close, but Larko touched on the aerodynamics. When you're following one of these cars quite closely, you lose all of the front downforce that front spoiler generates, and then you subsequently lose a lot of front grip.
Willing racing going on here. That's Will Davison in the Techno Autosport Darrell Lee car, and the Erebus Holden. Yes, a Holden. If you missed Clipsal, they're Holden bound now. This is really willing stuff. David Reynolds just got hip and shouldered a little bit wide, and James Moffat looking to take advantage. Dale Wood is in the mix, and they're all 2x2. The Clipsal 500 winner is in the game just a little bit further back, and car 222 for LD Motorsport looking to buy into this. This is feisty stuff, and Mark Winterbottom, who started on the front row of the grid, is currently 22nd, racing with Timmy Blanchard and Nick Percat just a little bit further up the road.
And this is frustrating for Mark Winterbottom. He knows he's got the car speed to be running top 4, top 5, and now he's stuck in the battle for 17th, and they race for sheep stations down the back. It's elbows out. See Will Davison there getting used to the new Techno car, as is David Reynolds, you know, coming from FPR, or PRA as it's known now, jumping into an ex-HRT Commodore.
Interesting to note, Fabian Coulthard fastest on the racetrack last time round and fastest lap of the race, 1:58.3, long way off lap record pace, but that's to be expected with this changeable weather. I suspect we haven't seen the end of it yet. We've still got a Porsche Carrera Cup race, an ultimate speed comparison, and of course, a little bit later on today, free practice 2 for the Rolex Formula 1 Australian Grand Prix. It's going to be fascinating stuff as Whincup just pegs his teammate back a little bit. Fabian Coulthard's been really good here. He won the round overall here in 2013 and has 3 race victories to his credit at Albert Park, all of them for Brad Jones Racing, driving the Lockwood Commodore as it was. Of course, the move to GTR Team Penske in the off-season bearing fruits already, but strong start for Fabian, running 3rd.
Spirited battle between Scotty McLaughlin in the Volvo and Craig Lowndes. I went looking for Scotty this morning to have a chat, see how his qualifying session went yesterday, and he was at home playing on the PlayStation.
Yeah, he was.
So we could see where his focus was early this morning, but good to see him. You know, they've made a few changes this weekend to a few of the technical components of the car, and as we see a replay here, so David Reynolds actually did get into the back of Will Davison there. The left front made contact with the right rear, and it just knocked him wide and enabled Moffat in the 34 Volvo to get the run on both of them.
And Wood just trying to sneak up the middle of them, and that was firmly shut by David Reynolds in the Penrite Erebus Holden. Good to see Scott McLaughlin, once he got himself off the PlayStation, got to the track, was watching our coverage of free practice 1 from the back of the Volvo Transporter, which is nice to see.
Looks like Lowndes has been able to get past Scotty there, so that may have happened down at turn 3. There's our championship leader behind Cameron Waters, who's made his debut this year full-time in the championship series. He did get to sub for Chaz last year at a few of the rounds, but this is his first crack at solo driving through the championship series.
Great moment after the Clipsal 500 when Michael Caruso was told he was leading the championship. Like, you what? Really? You serious? First time since 1992 that a Nissan led the V8 Supercar / Australian Touring Car Championship. It's a great moment. They need to build on that though. And it's time they started delivering race victories. They know that. It's a strong program. Not a lot of change in the off-season in the 4-car Nissan squad. Of course, Dale Wood joining that program, but the 3 other cars remain very, very consistent. They've got the new spec engines in. I think that program will start to deliver as the year goes on. And
it was quite visible that the front 3 cars with Todd and Rick Kelly and also Michael Caruso were very competitive at Clipsal. They weren't necessarily challenging for the win, but they were well inside the top 10 at various stages through the weekend. So it's good to see their program bearing the fruit, so to speak, as we see Garth Tanders managed to get past James Courtney. So some further team battles happening down the grid. We look now, Shane Van Gisbergen. I reckon Jamie Whincup didn't have any damage on that tyre. He's made me eat my words there. He's got good car speed as he's matching Shane Van Gisbergen's pace and just been able to sneak away from Fabian Coulthard, who's got a little bit of extra pressure now from Chaz Mostert.
Yeah, Van Gisbergen just inching away ever so slightly, literally 1/10 of a second that lap to Jamie Whincup. The next 3 cars, Coulthard, Mostert and Pye, the 3 forwards, banging out identical lap times behind them. Here goes Mostert, this for the final spot on the podium in the race. And does he wrestle it away? Racing room given, nicely done, position changed, and the Super Cheap Ford goes to P3.
That was good, clean racing. Both drivers gave each other racing room, and like we spoke about, that's going to be a topical discussion throughout the championship series this year, and good to see 2 fair races there, and Chaz looks like he's got a little bit more car speed on Fabian.
That is, isn't it, Jacko? That is high quality driving when you see guys do that and leave a little bit of racing room at the right time. For young blokes watching, that's exactly how you do it. I'm really enjoying this battle at the front. While the cars look quite tidy, don't kid yourself, those cars are absolutely on the edge. And there's a little mind game going on here. Jamie's absolutely compelled to keep this bloke behind him. Shane Van Gisbergen absolutely compelled to get past. The team will be under strict instructions from Roland Dean, the team boss. They're fine to race, they're fine to overtake each other, but they don't dare make contact. You remember a couple of years ago at Simmons Plains, Craig and Jamie Whincup didn't go down well, so you won't see that happen again, I can tell you that.
Let me tell you, Jamie Whincup is trying. Out of turn 9 then, he had 2 wheels out on the wet grass where we saw Will Davison crash yesterday in practice. So he is really trying to get some ground on his new teammate, Shane Van Gisbergen.
Larko, you had some pretty fiery drivers driving for you over the time. What was your contact policy between teammates?
Well, let's go back to the contract policy first. The contract policy was cheap. The drivers are overpaid. It's pretty well the same. Each contract down the pit lane will be very, very similar, because if the teammates don't race and race hard, well, you don't get value out of them. And when we're just looking at that battle back then, a really good example of that is Scotty McLaughlin and James Moffat, who at the moment he'll be disappointed running in 18th, because what that team needed to do, Gary Rogers Racing, the Volvo team, was to draft in another A grader. So Scotty McLaughlin had someone to push him along and race, because when you're in equal equipment, then there's no excuses. So it's so important at the same time you have two drivers battling that they've got to be able to do it without taking each other out.
Feisty battle with James Courtney, Craig Lowndes, Scott McLaughlin, Cam Waters, Michael Caruso. It goes on and on. Half a dozen cars involved in a very tight fight there for the minors, the bottom half of the top 10. Two Red Bull Commodores have just pulled away as Mostert and Coulthard diced the lap before. It's Van Gisbergen, Whincup, Mostert third, Coulthard fourth, Pye, Tander, Courtney seventh, Lowndes, McLaughlin and Waters rounding out the top 10. Now, it says lap 11 of 12. There are some time pressures involved in this, so we're not 100% sure if we'll go the full distance or not. So far, so good. And there's still a lap and a bit to go in this one.
We see there, Craig Lowndes has been able to get past James Courtney. Looks like he's actually dropped back from the back of Garth Tander. I think James may have just taken off the edge of the rear tyres there, and he's falling back through the field. And
as I talk, word comes through from race control Tim Schenken, the race director. This will be the final lap. So that battle between Van Gisbergen and Whincup will be decided this time by the points accumulate over the 4 races this weekend. So it's the old school round format. You get the most points at the end of the 4 races, you win the weekend and get the big trophy. So every race counts in the Coe Tire V8 Supercar Challenge. This is a good scrap. Michael Caruso, the inside of the Monster Energy Drink PRA car. This is for the final spot inside the top 10. Waters blocks, the impressive young rookie development series champion. Side by side, we wait for Van Gisbergen to get the checkered flag. Big victory, and that battle between the Triple Eight teammates kicks off with Van Gisbergen in front at Albert Park. It's a 1-2, the first win for this team at Albert Park since 2011. And it's rare you can roll out a statistic like that when you talk about Red Bull Racing Australia. Just shows how much it means to the team. You see, they're all very happy about that. And like we said, everyone comes to this event putting their best foot forward. And the first win for Shane Van Gisbergen for his new team, although it's not a championship race, it's still the first one in the books, and a nice little mental win over his teammate. Moves to 5 victories now at Albert Park. Shane Van Gisbergen ties Lowndes and Bright on the all-time winners list here. He's had a lot of success at this venue, and that's a very, very good win and a great exchange between two very, very good drivers. It's Shane Van Gisbergen in front of Jamie Whincup. Chaz Mostert was third, Fabian Coulthard fourth, Scott Pye a solid 5th place. Yeah, Garth Tander 6th, Craig Lowndes in 7th, James Courtney dropping back to 8th, Scott McLaughlin in 9th, and Cameron Waters in the monster car in 10th. You suspect that battle for the bottom half of the top 10 will be continually fierce over the weekend. Michael Caruso just 11th, Timmy Slane up to 12th after a disappointing qualifying performance. The Freightliner Commodore Rick Kelly 13th, and the Senglet Nissan. Then Chris Pither, Super Black Ford was 14th, Lee Holdsworth 15th, Will Davison, David Reynolds, James Moffat battled his way to 18th, then Wood and Blanchard. Mark Winterbottom from the front row of the grid to 21st has got a lot of work to do as the weekend continues. There are 3 more races. The Coe Tire V8 Supercar Challenge. We've got Porsche Carrera Cup and an ultimate speed comparison coming your way a little bit later on this afternoon as we count down to free practice 2 for the Formula 1 Rolex Australian Grand Prix. Before that,